In the vast stretches of the West where the wind sweeps across the land and the open sky meets the horizon, lived a man named Sam. He was a rancher, working alone on his piece of land. The land was his responsibility and he took care of it every day. But despite his hard work, he felt a deep loneliness. There were no other families nearby and he rarely saw anyone except for when he made the trip into town. Most days, the only company he had were the animals he cared for and the trees that lined the fields. Sam wasn't a man of many words, and he preferred it that way. He found comfort in the quiet life, but he couldn't escape the feeling that something was missing. It wasn't just the long hours of hard work. It was the emptiness that lingered in the house at night when the stars filled the sky, and there was no one to share the view with. One day, Sam decided to ride into town to gather some supplies. He didn't go often, but this time he needed to stock up on food and some tools for the ranch. The town was a small one with only a handful of buildings and a few shops. Most of the people in town were either farmers or ranchers themselves, and Sam didn't have many close friends among them. He wasn't unfriendly, but he was always more comfortable alone. As Sam rode into the town square, something unusual caught his attention. There, sitting near the edge of the road, was a young woman. She was dressed in simple clothes, her hair tied back in a rough braid. She looked out of place in the town, her face worn, but not in a way that made her look weak. There was a quiet strength about her that intrigued Sam. He approached her, unsure of what to say. The girl looked up as he came closer. Her eyes were dark and guarded, and her posture was tense, as if she expected him to turn away at any moment. Sam stopped his horse a few feet away and simply said, "Are you all right?" The girl's response was soft but carried a weight that Sam could feel even from where he sat. "No man wants me," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. There was a sadness in her tone, but also a kind of bitterness, as if she had said those words many times before and had learned to accept them. Sam wasn't sure what to make of her words, but he could see the hurt in her eyes. He had seen it in his own reflection many times. Loneliness was a feeling he knew all too well. He looked at the girl, who was clearly an Apache, and wondered what had brought her here. Why was she alone, sitting by the side of the road in a town that didn't seem to welcome her? "I'm Sam," he said, keeping his tone gentle. "I've heard talk that there's an Apache girl in town. I didn't expect to find you here alone." The girl looked down, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She didn't meet his eyes, but spoke again, her words slow and hesitant. "The people here don't want me," she said. "I've been cast out. No man wants me because of who I am." Sam felt a pang in his chest as he listened. He knew how cruel people could be, how they could judge someone simply because they were different. He had seen it in the way the town treated those who didn't fit in, and now he saw it in the girl before him. He didn't know her story, but it was clear that she had been hurt by the people who were supposed to show her kindness. He thought for a moment, then offered the only thing he could. "I don't know what's happened to you, but I don't judge you. If you need a place to stay, my ranch is just outside of town. It's quiet there. I won't ask anything of you except that you don't have to be alone." The girl looked up at him then, her eyes searching his face as if trying to find any sign that he was lying or mocking her. But all she saw was a man who was serious, who wasn't judging her and who seemed to offer her a chance, something no one else had. For a long time, she didn't say anything. Sam waited patiently, not pushing her. He knew this was her decision to make, and he would respect it no matter what she chose. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she stood up. Slowly, as if she were still unsure, she nodded. "I'll come with you," she said, her voice soft but steady. Sam didn't say anything more. He simply led his horse around and motioned for the girl to follow. She did, walking a few paces behind him, her feet dragging slightly in the dust. He knew she wasn't used to being treated with kindness. He could see it in the way she moved, in the way she kept her distance. They made the journey to Sam's ranch without speaking much more. The silence between them was heavy, but neither of them seemed to mind. When they finally arrived at the ranch, Sam led the girl to the small cabin where he lived. It wasn't much, but it was home. The land was his, and it was all he had to offer. Once inside, Sam showed the girl the spare room, the one he used for storage. He cleared a place for her to sleep, offering her a bedroll and a few blankets. The room was small and simple, but it would be enough. The girl looked around, her eyes taking in everything but saying nothing. Sam didn't expect her to be grateful, but he hoped she would feel safe. The ranch was isolated, and there was nothing here to harm her. She was welcome to stay for as long as she wanted, and Sam made sure she knew that. As he left the room, he glanced back at her. She was sitting on the bed now, staring out the window. Sam wasn't sure what the future held for them, but he knew one thing for certain. She wasn't alone anymore. She had a place to stay, and she had someone who wouldn't turn her away just because of her past. He quietly closed the door behind him, leaving her to settle in. Sam knew it wouldn't be easy, and it might take time for the girl to trust him. But that was all right. He had time. He had waited his whole life for a change, for someone to share his world with, and now that someone had arrived. As the sun set and the stars began to fill the sky, Sam sat outside on the porch listening to the quiet of the night. The wind rustled the trees, and for the first time in a long while, Sam felt at peace. The days that followed were quiet, much like the ones Sam was used to. But there was a subtle difference. With the arrival of the Apache girl, whom he had learned was named Tala, the ranch felt fuller. Even though she didn't speak much at first, her presence was a change from the usual silence that hung in the air. Tala spent most of her time in the small room Sam had given her, rarely leaving it during the first few days. Sam respected her space, knowing that she needed time to adjust. She had been alone for so long, and now she was in a new place with someone who didn't seem to want anything from her except her company. Sam felt it was important to let her settle in at her own pace. On the 5th day, Tala finally ventured out of her room. She was hesitant at first, but she watched Sam as he worked the fields. He didn't ask her to help, but when she walked over to him, he saw the curiosity in her eyes. She watched how he fed the horses, how he handled the cattle, and how the land seemed to respond to his care. Sam paused, wiping the sweat from his brow as he looked at her. "Would you like to help with the animals?" he asked, his voice gentle. Tala nodded slightly, but there was a hesitation in her movements. She had never worked on a ranch before, let alone been around so many animals. But there was something about the way Sam worked, something calm and steady that made her want to try. He didn't rush her, but simply handed her a small bucket and motioned to the troughs where the horses drank. At first, Tala fumbled with the bucket, spilling some of the water. But Sam didn't laugh at her mistakes. Instead, he smiled and said, "It takes time. You'll get the hang of it." As the days turned into weeks, Tala began to feel more at home. She learned the routines of the ranch, how to tend to the animals, how to help Sam with the work, and how to handle the land with the care it needed. Sam taught her as much as he could, and in return, Tala helped in ways she had never thought possible. One morning, Sam came to the ranch house to find Tala sitting by the fire, her head bowed as she carefully worked on weaving a small piece of cloth. Sam hadn't known she had such skills, but as he watched her, he realized that there was much about her he didn't know. Tala had learned to survive on her own, and she had skills that would be valuable here on the ranch. "You've got quite the touch," Sam remarked, leaning against the doorframe. Tala looked up at him, a faint smile crossing her lips. "I learned from my grandmother," she said softly. "She taught me how to make things with my hands when I was young." Sam nodded, understanding. "It's a good skill to have. There's always work to do around here." Tala's eyes lingered on him for a moment. She wasn't sure why he had been so kind to her, why he had given her a place when no one else had. But as the days went by, she began to feel a sense of gratitude toward him. Slowly, her walls began to fall and she started to trust him. But there was more to this connection than just kindness. Tala began to notice things about Sam, his quiet strength, the way he carried himself with dignity, the way he never complained about his work, no matter how hard it was. She saw how he cared for the land and the animals and how he never expected anything in return. It was in these moments that Tala began to see something more in him. She didn't know what it was, but there was a warmth inside her whenever he was near. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sam and Tala sat together on the porch. The evening air was warm and the stars began to fill the sky. Tala had been helping Sam with the cattle, and now, as they rested, there was a peacefulness between them. "I never thought I would find a place like this," Tala said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Sam looked at her, his eyes thoughtful. "You've earned it. You're a part of this place now. You don't have to go anywhere." Tala smiled, but there was a sadness in her eyes. "I don't think I've ever felt like I belonged before," she said quietly. "Not anywhere." Sam's heart ached for her. He had known loneliness in his life, but her pain seemed deeper. It was as if she had been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders for far too long. "You belong here, Tala," Sam said gently, his voice steady and reassuring. You found a place. And so have I. Tala looked at him then, really looked at him. There was a bond between them now. Something more than just kindness or mutual respect. They had both been lonely in different ways, but together, they had found something that made life a little more bearable. For the first time in a long while, Tala felt like she wasn't invisible, like she wasn't a burden to be cast aside. Sam had given her a chance, and in return she had given him her trust. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about living and doing so with someone who cared. Over the next few months, their bond grew stronger. They worked side by side, and the ranch, once quiet and empty, began to feel alive. Sam had never imagined he would find someone like Tala, and Tala never imagined she would find someone who would accept her for who she was. One evening, as the sky darkened and the stars began to twinkle, Sam and Tala sat together in silence. It was a comfortable silence, one that had become familiar over time. They didn't need to speak to understand each other. Finally, Sam spoke, his voice soft but filled with meaning. "I'm glad you came here, Tala. I can't imagine life without you." Tala didn't know what to say at first. She had never been good with words, but she didn't need them. She simply leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his presence. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she had found a place where she truly belonged. "I'm glad too," she said quietly, her voice full of emotion. "I'm glad I'm here." The night wrapped around them like a blanket, and as they sat there together, they both knew that their lives had changed forever. They had found something in each other, something real, something lasting, and for the first time in a long while, they both felt at peace. They weren't alone anymore.